Thursday, everybody. I'm Jade Scott. This is GrowthRx, and we are live at lunch today with the amazing Peter Flynn. Hey, Pete.
How are you going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Pete is an award-winning physiotherapist and business owner, founder of PhysioFit, but also a passionate educator, particularly in communication and mentoring of young graduates through his iMoveU platform, iMoveU Education, which are soon to announce an online course, but maybe I've given that away. But welcome today, Pete. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, look, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here amongst some brilliant names that you've had over the past couple of weeks as well.
And we've certainly got people coming back on Thursdays and scheduling this time period now for some really valuable CPD. But before we start, I obviously know you really well, but there's some other people in the group who don't. So I thought we would start just with a few get to know you questions. Let's start with, and unfortunately in light of COVID, we are all stuck inside at the moment. But if you were going to go on a holiday or reflect on your favourite holiday destination, what would it be?
Look, my recent favourite holiday destination has been Zambreros, and I've tried to go there 2 to 3 times a week. But if I could be leaving the state, I think I'd probably say Switzerland, one of my favourite places, Interlaken. It's absolutely beautiful.
I'll second that. I jumped out of a helicopter over there, which was one of the best moments of my life. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, I would recommend that as well. Let's go with your favourite superhero that you resonate with as a child or love the movies.
Favourite superhero? I mean, I'm still a child, so I can pick one I really like. I love all the Marvel movies, and probably one of my favourite characters is Iron Man. He's bloody amazing. Hilarious, a bit of a dick, but, you know, in a good way. He gets shit done.
Okay, and my favourite question, as you know, you're going to get it as well. Do you consider Crocs an acceptable form of footwear?
I've never worn them, to be honest, and maybe they're amazing. I don't love how they look, but maybe they're amazing. Maybe the function behind them is brilliant, but I much prefer Ugg boots.
And I know that there's a lot of people in this group who love them. Apparently they're like walking on a cloud, and I will trust your judgment on that. And the next question, obviously in true GrowthRx style, we love to recognise the contributions of people in great leadership doing amazing things. What does leadership mean to you?
Leadership to me, I think it's just working for your team. I think sometimes when people get into a leadership role, it's like everyone works for you, whereas leadership is what can you give in the way of support and mainly support to your team, I think. And
that's been one of the common threads with some of the presenters in the past is the notion that leadership is also leading but also giving back. So yeah, it's really, really nice to hear that. Now, you this year were going to present on communication. Was it the APA conference this year?
Yeah, I was going to be doing a couple over there. One on social media in business, one of your favourite areas, and the other on communication in leadership.
And communication is exactly why I've got you in today. I mean, at the moment, if you think communication in allied health, your name certainly comes up. So you're creating some waves and definitely a meaningful impact in this area. And you have presented some slides and a presentation. So we're so grateful for what you have. So I'm going to hand over to you now so that you can do your stuff and sit back with everybody else who's watching. Hey, everybody, if you are watching.
All right, give me a second while I pull this bad boy up. And we'll hit present. Now, before we get into it, I do have to apologize. I was going to put some color and make it look a lot better, but I'm really colorblind. And the effort of having to get someone to check, does this color go with this color? And can you see these? It was all too much for me because I think red and yellow go really well together, but apparently they don't. So the thing I'd like to talk about today, and thank you very much for having me here, Jade, is communication. And I think communication for me started as a passion a few years ago when I first started doing videos and I first started getting into educating and public speaking. And I will never forget, I watched this video of myself and I was delivering some education over Facebook and I watched it back and here's me going, I nailed it. I absolutely nailed this one, right? I watched it back and I said, at least 30 times. And this was only a 30-second video. And I said, like, I just kept saying these filler words and I didn't sound confident. I didn't look confident. And I was just like monotone. I didn't change how fast I spoke. And it was just this the whole time. And like, I really struggled to get through that 30 seconds. And I remember turning to Andrew, my business partner, and going, I don't sound like that, do I? I don't say that much. I'm not that boring. And he just looked at me. He's just like, yeah, no, you actually do, man. You actually do say a lot. And for me, that was the start of learning to improve my communication, because I didn't want to be a shit communicator. And I thought, well, if this is how I'm presenting to clients and to the people we're leading, but in this scenario, clients, they're not going to believe me. They're not going to trust me. If they come in and they've got an issue and I'm delivering a piece of management or education or a diagnosis, and I don't sound or look confident, I don't have great empathy in how I'm speaking, then they're not going to get better. And it started me down this massive rabbit hole of how do you improve your communication, and is there any evidence behind this in healthcare? So we'll get stuck into that now, and jump in anytime, Jade, if you want to throw any questions or if anyone's asking any questions at all right? Oops, too many. There we go. I feel like my mum at the moment jumping ahead slides and struggling here. So unfortunately, she's not watching. I'd get in trouble with that one. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes. The patient will never care how much you, the patient will never care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think when we reflect as healthcare professionals, the better we think we are, and the more information, the more knowledge that we have, we start to think that people will suddenly just respect the information we're giving them because of some status or because we think we're really good. But the person on the other side of the room there, the person listening to us, what's actually going through their mind is the problems that they're facing. And they don't care how smart you are. It doesn't matter if you've got a PhD or you're a bachelor or a master's. What they care about is, do you genuinely care about them and their problem? Are you going to listen to them? And are you going to help them to find a solution? Because I don't know about you, but I've seen many healthcare professionals in my life before. And I remember sitting on the other side of that table as they just dictated something to me in words I didn't understand. They didn't listen to me at all. I remember I was a tennis player and I said, I want to get back to tennis because I was a high-level tennis player. And he said, look, the best thing you can do for your knees is to stop playing tennis. That's all well and good, but that wasn't my goal. There was a massive mismatch there. And so I just went somewhere else. And how often do we do that? How often do we think that our knowledge comes first? But we have to make sure that our empathy and our care shines through first. Now, chronic pain is something that I'm quite passionate about, actually. There's not many people who say, I'm really passionate about chronic pain. I love it, right? Many practitioners that I talk to, they go, oh shit, when chronic pain comes in, I dread it. I don't want to see them. They're hard. It's a lot of work. They complain a lot, whatever it is. A lot of people don't love working with chronic pain. But I think it's an exciting place for us to be working in, right? And as healthcare professionals, it's interesting. When I talk to healthcare professionals, when we survey them at events, and we say, are we getting better? Is healthcare improving in Australia? And everyone puts their hand up. They say, yeah, of course, we're getting better. There's new evidence coming out. We're constantly improving our skills. But I don't think we are. When we look at the research, the chronic pain epidemic, it's getting worse. Year on year, it's getting worse. Currently, it costs, I think, about $230 billion per year in Australia. And they expect in the next 10 to 20 years, that's going to hit over $300 billion. So that's a massive loss of income, a lot of expenditure for the government, right? And private health and whatever else, and people, but also the loss of quality of life. So with chronic pain, what we're finding is that there's an increase in chronic pain. There's a massive increase in dependence on pain medications, leading to increased morbidity and a decreased feeling of control. And if we got this decreased feeling of control, this is one of the things that I think that we can really start to change with our communication style. So what does the literature say? Now, if you a couple of years ago when I first started diving into this, I thought there won't be much literature on communication. But I'd encourage you to go have a look, because there is a lot. There's a huge body of research on communication, and it's just getting more and more as we move towards that patient-centered care. And what they're looking at is there's an increased authoritarian, or like a practitioner-centered attitude. And they also looked, and they did this study in medical students, people in their second year of medicine compared to people when they just finished medicine. And there was I think it was about a 70% increase in a practitioner-centered attitude. So that authoritarian, I'm right, I'm the health professional and you're the patient. There was a 70% increase in that from when they're in their second year to when they finished. So what is happening in that period of time, and I'm sure it's the same through most health professions as well, that we go from being, it's about working with the patient, to I'm right because I did the study and I know what's best for you. I think that's an interesting point to start to look into. Now, what is patient-centered care? If you jump on Facebook and you throw up, this is patient-centered care, or this is what I think it is, you'll get torn apart into many groups by keyboard warriors from all around the world who love to have their opinion on what patient-centered care is to them. But this was one of my favorite ways of saying it that I found throughout the literature. So patient-centered care, as does evidence-based medicine, considers both the art of generalizations and the science of particulars, which sounds like a bit of a tongue twister, but I'll explain, I'll go a little bit further. So both the art of generalizations, so we're looking at the art of science essentially, generalizations, fitting people into a bell curve, and the science of particulars. So essentially the science of the person in front of you, and how can we really make everything 100% about that person in front of you? Because everyone's going to be slightly different, and there's no way we can just take the exact same method of dealing with people and apply it to that person in front of us. Because if we could, we'd be pretty good. Like, we'd be getting people better. So why patient-centered? Like, why is patient-centered care important? It's a bit of a buzzword, I think, in the healthcare industry at the moment. If you say, hey, what's your philosophy around treatment? People will put their hand up and go, patient-centered care, of course. But how many people actually take that philosophy and rigorously implement it? Because I don't think it's as many. And I'll put my hand up and say, time to time, you'll get someone come in and straight away you go, oh, I know what's best for you. And you go straight into that. And you miss some of those small things. And when we miss these small things, that's when it starts to maybe push someone towards chronic pain. And a big risk factor for someone moving into chronic pain is us not really listening to them and their goals and their story. Now, I know some people talk a lot, but we do have to make sure that we listen to their story. In fact, the average time before a health professional interrupts someone in a study that they did a while ago was 9 seconds. Just 9 seconds before they got interrupted. And the average story length was just under 2 minutes. So just let that sink in for a second. We wait 9 seconds on average before we butt in and interrupt and finish someone's sentence, right? We should be waiting that just less than 2 minutes on average. And I know you're going to be saying, what about that one patient who talks for like 30 minutes? Take it with a grain of salt, okay? Like a little grain of salt there. There's some people you might have to keep on track. But for the majority, we jump in too fast because we think we know what's right. We think we know what they're going to say. We make assumptions. So patient-centered care, the research shows that it results in an increased adherence to management protocols, which is massive, reduced morbidity, and improved quality of life. Now, if you don't want these things for your patients, maybe you should be an accountant. Now, how do we implement this? Now, through the literature, this is my interpretation of it, and everyone's going to be different, so don't take this as the absolute way to do it. But this is what I've found has worked well for us and for the people that we work with. The first part of it is to build trust in a relationship. So if we build trust in a relationship with the person in front of us, they're more likely to do what we say. Like it just makes sense. Like just everyone's had this before, right? You've seen a patient, something you're really good at, and you've given them some advice and they've come back or they've cancelled because they're like, look, I was talking to the checkout chick at Woolies and she said, to go try this fancy technique just down the road here that's completely different, right? So why did they trust that person over you, or their friend or their auntie or their mum? It's because they had a better relationship, right? That person cares about them. And that's where it comes back to, until we show them that we care and we build that trust in a relationship, it doesn't matter what we say, they don't care. They might be paying for that session, but they're not going to fully trust you until you've built that relationship. So for me, that's the number one most important thing we need to be doing. Number two is to gather patient information. So listening. The thing we're worst at, I would say, is listening. Simple explanations for a shared understanding. Got a good story about this one. I used to be a shoulder physio before I stopped consulting. And sometimes you spend all this time learning this fancy language called Latin, which is what most anatomy is done in. And you want to show everyone how smart you are. And I remember when I first came out of uni and someone would come in, I'd be like, oh, that's a grade 2 mid-portion tear of your supraspinatus. And in my head, I'm like, God damn it, I nailed that. Look how smart I am. And they're looking back at me going, wow, this guy's a dick. Can't he just speak in language I can understand? Right? And so often I see that. I see people speaking on this level up here that we talk on as therapists. But if there's a gap here and they can't understand that, then we may as well be talking another language, because we are. All right? So simple explanations for a shared understanding, which then leads into the next part, which is collaborative decision-making, leading into empowerment of treatment-related behavior. And finally, I believe part of our job is to be an emotional babysitter. It's part of our job. I hear people all the time saying, oh, people will dump their problems on me. That's part of being any kind of therapist. If someone is having issues at home, or they're having some kind of stress or mental health issues, right, it's your job to facilitate and listen to that at least. And if they do need to see a psychologist or someone else, then to refer them on. But that affects their pain, that affects everything. And so to ignore that, I think is crazy. Now we're going to jump a little bit more into the communication side of that now, right? So communication occurs both verbally and non-verbally. And you might have heard a study that says non-verbal communication is more important than verbal communication. And it was actually a really shit study. And the author of that study has come out so many times and said, hey guys, you're completely misinterpreting what my study was. What they actually found was that non-verbal communication in a very specific population of something extremely narrow gave more information, right? But you couldn't extrapolate that. It's just impossible to extrapolate that. So what we find is your verbal communication is probably more important than your non-verbal, but still to think about your non-verbals. And when we're thinking about non-verbals, like think of a few things, right? Do you have resting bitch face? Because if someone's sitting there, and I used to have this, don't worry, if you got this, then I still have this, right? If you're listening to someone and they're telling you something, you know, it's a pretty rough story, or maybe it's how they got injured, or maybe it's about the stress in their life, and they're looking at resting bitch face here, they're not going to open up. You wouldn't want to open up either. Okay, so just think about what are the non-verbals that you're showing. Do you turn your seat and face them? If I'm facing the computer as you're talking to me and I just turn to look at you occasionally, and we've all seen this before, you might have been to a doctor who's done this or another health professional. But if you've seen that happen before, it doesn't feel very good. Like turn and show someone that you're listening. All right? Throw in a little nod every now and again. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's good. Understanding the patient's individual needs, perspectives, and values. Right, this is part of communication, is understanding the person in front of you so that you can communicate with them on a level that they want to be communicated on. Right, and I'll get more into that in a minute or so. Giving patients the information they need to participate in their care. Now, this is really important, right? We need to be able to give people the information so that they can participate and make decisions, because we don't want to be making decisions for them. We want to be guiding them towards a decision. But any decision, and just think of it, when someone makes a decision for you in your life, you don't take ownership over it. You don't like, even if it's a good decision, you kind of go, well, I want to do something slightly different. It's just human nature, right? Can you guide them through a series of questions so that they come to that realization? All right, that is art of communication. Rather than telling someone this is what we should do, are there 3 or 4 questions you can ask that get them to that, right, to that outcome through some experiential learning? That is brilliant. If you can do that, you'll be very successful as a therapist. And then building trust and understanding between your physician and your patient, or your therapist and your patient. It's incredibly important. Now, practitioner-patient communication is a major component of the process of healthcare. And this was a line that I found in at least 7 to 10 different literature articles this week when I was having a look through it, right? And there's a lot of evidence coming out, and most of it's in the medical world at the moment. I think they like to do most of their research there. And they found some shocking stuff. They found some really shocking stuff. Like people adhering better to cancer treatment when their practitioner had better communication. Like, I don't know about you, but if I had a very serious disease such as cancer, I would be adhering 100% to it. But what they found was there's a massive increase when the treating physician had better communication and developed better rapport with that person. I think that's incredible, because we deal with people who, they've got something that it's not ideal, but it's probably not going to kill them. So if this is still an issue when something could kill you, when we're seeing people for musculoskeletal issues, I think we've got a much harder job to convince them to actually follow the management, especially if we ask them to exercise, because most people hate bloody exercise. So I think that's an interesting point. And I think we need to realize that we're in a unique position of power and respect. So when someone comes to see us, we're in that position of power and respect. So it's absolutely not your patient's job to change their communication style to meet you. It's your job to change to meet them, right? We're in that position. Too often, and I've done this myself in the past, was I would walk out and I go, I just didn't get along with that person. Just don't know what it was. I just didn't like how they talked, right? I wasn't spending the time to find out what do they want to talk about and how did they like to be communicated to. And you'll see it from therapists. They'll say, I just didn't get along with that person. Okay. Well, can we set a challenge that you can get along with that person? Find something in common and run with it. Because I guarantee if you put your mind to it and you say, hey, look, I'm going to find something in common with this person and we are going to have a good session, we're going to have a good chat. 99% of the time you will. And you'll grow to like treating that person. I think it's great. Now, patient-centered communication, a little bit of research here. Great communication skills increase these things. I'm just going to fly through them. Patient satisfaction makes sense. Adherence to treatment plans. If they like you, they're more likely to do what you say. Self-management of chronic conditions. Again, this baffles me, but if someone has a chronic condition, something serious in their life, and we communicate better with them, the research shows that they look after themselves better. And the clinical outcomes. If you want to be a truly great therapist, then the way that you communicate with your patients that allows them to come to their own decisions and be part of that process and actually genuinely improve, that's how you're going to get amazing clinical outcomes. That's how you'll be an amazing clinician. Now, interestingly, on the other side of the equation, poor communication skills increase patient dissatisfaction. As you'd imagine, patients feeling not listened to, perceived indifference, which is where they feel like you don't care about them. Right? If you don't communicate well, they're going to feel like this person doesn't care about me. I'm going to go somewhere else, which is the number-1 reason why people actually go to another therapist, is because they feel like their therapist they were seeing didn't care. So maybe we didn't listen, we're too authoritative in how we did it. But all those things will play a part in perceived indifference. We've got patient misunderstanding of the condition, which makes sense if we don't communicate well. And lastly, which is my favorite one on here, is the likelihood of a malpractice lawsuit. Right now, this came from America where they sue everyone for everything. Like, it's unreal. And what they looked at was doctors and surgeons and the likelihood of being sued. And the likelihood of being sued did not actually correlate well with the outcome, the medical or surgical outcome. Didn't correlate well at all. But what it did correlate really well with was how much they liked their doctor or how much they liked their surgeon, right? So if you don't want to get sued, and most people don't want to get sued, I imagine it's not great, I haven't been there yet, but if you don't want to get sued, then creating great relationships with your patients is the best way to protect that. It's not just getting great outcomes. People could still see you. They could still get unhappy, but it's creating a brilliant relationship with them. And it makes sense. If you think, if your mum, let's say you love your mum, right? Most people do. If your mum reverses into your car and doesn't have car insurance, you're probably not going to, you're hopefully not going to sue her, right? But if a random stranger does in the car park and they don't have insurance, and they run into you, you're probably going to sue them. Like, it makes sense. You don't know that person. You don't have a prior relationship. So if nothing else, and you don't want to be sued, focus on your communication skills. So patient-centered communication, great practitioner-patient relationships will increase. Now, this is for you, the practitioner. Now, this is the good stuff that comes from this. Practitioner job satisfaction. If you get people better and you work with people who you've developed good relationships with, another word for this is friends, right? You enjoy your job more. Now, just think, right? And I'll give you a nice little picture in your head. I remember when I first started and I looked at a day and I had 6 people in my day. In an 8-hour day, 6 patients. And 5 of them I fucking hated. They were terrible. I was just like, oh my golly gosh, this is going to be horrible. It felt like an exhausting day, right? But now if I had 15, 16 people in a day and they were all shoulders, I would look at that and be energized. I'm excited to do that. Like, really genuinely excited. So for me, your practitioner job satisfaction, a lot of that comes down to the relationships you build with your patients and the type of patients you see, which comes from your communication. Your patient's self-confidence will increase, which is awesome. If you've ever got a phone call or an email from a patient after they've just done something that they thought they could never do again, that's one of the most brilliant feelings you'll ever have in your life. Your patient's motivation to actually get better. How nice is it when you give someone an exercise or a management plan to go home and do, and they actually do it? Like, that's unheard of. It's really nice. So their motivation will improve, their positive view of their health status and their health outcomes. So they'll get better. This was actually the study I just mentioned. A 62% increased adherence to treatment plan with a treating practitioner was receiving communication training. Now, this was done in doctors, in the medical field, in people with chronic health conditions like hypertension, diabetes, and in cancer treatments as well. So people just took better care of themselves if we developed a better relationship with them. Okay, so putting that relationship and that communication right up high on that pedestal, because if we can do that really well, then our patients will stick to what you give them. And the more you think about that, the more it makes sense. And this was, as I said, in those 3 areas. So how do we take the next step forward through enhancing communication in healthcare? I think this is the biggest question, right? Because there's no right or wrong here. And I can't say, go do this one course. If you do this one course, you'll be a brilliant communicator. You'll develop great relationships with the patient in front of you and you'll be amazing, right? That would be cool. And maybe I'll work towards developing that with Jade at some point, but that may be next step. For me, I think the main thing that it comes down to is something we've been taught our entire life. Treat others like you would like to be treated. And I think this is fundamentally flawed, right? And I think if we change this to treat others how they would like to be treated, and we started to see the world not from our own perspective, but from the person in front of us, that we would be much better communicators. Now, I'll give you a nice little example of this one too. I've got a practice manager and she runs my business better than I ever could. So I hope she's not watching this right now. She's bloody amazing, but we are very different personalities. We are very, very different. If you're going to give some information to me and it could be said in 3 words, say it in 2. All right, I'm busy. Get it done. Get it out. I'm moving on to the next thing. Sammy, who's our practice manager, amazing, like I said. But if it can be said in 3 words, let's talk for an hour. Okay? And you can see already there's this mismatch of communication here. There's one person who likes it short, sharp, shiny when it comes to work, and the other person who likes a lot of fluff in that. Right? Those 2 communication styles don't match at all. So I can't go up to Sammy and go, hey, need this, this, and this, and then walk off. Because inside she'll die. She'll be like, oh my God, he's angry at me. because that's how they'll see that. So, and don't worry, I did this plenty early on until I started to realize that, hey, this isn't working. And it's my job as a leader to change my communication style to match other people. So when I changed that to a 5-minute conversation and ask how your weekend was and go into a little bit more depth in those things, suddenly it's the same message, but it's perceived differently because I've delivered it in a way that is how she would like to be treated. And with all of our patients, I think we don't spend enough time thinking, how does this person like to be communicated to? What is it about their communication style to us, right, that we can match back to them? Because most people will communicate how they like to be communicated to. And so if we listen and we think, all right, well, what's happening here? How is he communicating? Right? And we match the types of words that they use. And we match the type of, if they're very short, we should be short back too. If they speak longer, we should be longer as well. All right? Maybe if they swear a lot, you might swear back too. Okay? So just thinking about how does that person communicate to us? And I think if you take nothing else out, it's treat others how they would like to be treated, and do that by listening to how they treat you, how they communicate with you. Now, this is not 100%, and if someone comes in and they're angry at you, it doesn't mean blow up back at them, right? So I'm just covering my ass so I can't be sued here, Jade. But, but when it comes to the person in front of you, taking more notice of how they communicate, because I think most people don't do that. And I think it's a massive opportunity for all of us to improve. Now, when it comes to matching, if we go into a few different things here, and it'd be really nice if we had everyone on, we can make this very interactive right now, but just think of the energy, all right? And I might just stop share and I'll use the whiteboard for this a little bit, if that's all right, Jane.
Got you.
Easy. I might jump to this camera too. All right, can you still hear me all right?
Yep.
Beautiful. So when it comes to matching, probably the first one I like to think of is like the energy that someone brings. Because if, let's say someone comes in and they go, hey, like I'm in a lot of pain and it's just not going well. And I come in, and I used to do this as well because I thought positive Pete was how life had to be. And if I was positive, it would bring everyone else up. So imagine this person there, look, life's not going well. I'm still in a lot of pain. And I'm like, don't worry about it. It's going to be great. Don't worry. We're going to get through this. We're going to do this together, right? That person's like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? They don't like that, right? So if I was to match him and go, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I think if we continue down this path and follow the management plan, we'll be able to get you there. Okay, that person likes to be communicated to like that. And I've got another patient who, interesting bloke, he's a psychologist, and his name's Simo. I'm sure you'll hear of him as he's doing his PhD at the moment in men's health. And he's very successful because he's a very blokey bloke. He's 130 kilo, big weightlifter kind of guy, not your average psychologist you think of. And when he comes in, he'll come in swearing and very, very loud and over the top, like everyone in the whole clinic knows when he's in the clinic type thing. And if I responded to him and was like, hey, how you going, mate? He would be like, what is wrong with you? With a few more swear words in there. Okay, so he would be sort of looking at that. Another thing you can think about is what type of words are they using? If someone comes in and they start speaking to us in anatomical language, okay, so they say, oh, yeah, I've got this supraspinatus issue, and we go, yeah, rotator cuff, right? And we sort of just pull it back to that lower level of language. We're not going to build rapport with that person because they're trying to speak to us on a level here. That's obviously where they want to talk. And we're just not listening to them. We're bringing them back down here. And we're basically telling them that you're not good enough to talk to us on that level. And the same goes the exact opposite. If they come in and they say, I've hurt my rotator cuff, you don't need to sit there and correct them and go, it's a rotator cuff, mate. Okay, so you can work with people a little bit on these things, but just think, what are the words they're using to us? And over time, you might help correct some of that understanding. But too many people jump in straight away. They talk up here, or they're always correcting people. Just remember what it feels like when someone always corrects you. It's not lovely. Okay. Now, there's a few other things we can do here. Volume's obviously one. If someone's, they're very loud and you're very quiet, it's going to be a massive mismatch. You're not going to automatically get along really well, or the opposite too. So just think, what sort of volume are they using? As long as you're not shouting at each other. Another one could be your rate of speech. And I think that this is a really important one that is often not thought of. So rate of speech. Just think of maybe, you know, a 15-year-old girl who speaks really, really fast. She speaks like this all the time. They get really, really excited about the thought. Right? They speak fast. Now imagine that person talks to someone from Texas who speaks really slowly. They're going to hate each other. They're not going to communicate. They're going to hate talking to each other. It's going to be bloody horrible. Right? So the person in front of you, think about how they communicate with you. If they're talking fast, talk a bit faster to them. Because if you have a massive mismatch in any of these different types of things, then it's going to be harder to build that trust and rapport. And we could go on all the different foundations of speech, and body language is another one that we could go deep into. You know, if they lean forwards, you lean forwards. If they're sitting back, you would sit back. And there's some sort of little bits of research into that and how that works. It's really interesting, actually, but we'll move on to the next slide anyway.
One of the things that I'm seeing there come up constantly is the ability to adapt and change and make your personality malleable to the person that's in front of you, whether it be an 80-year-old elderly man or a 6-year-old girl who's fallen off monkey bars. You know, your ability to adapt to the person who's sitting in front of you, use their language, use their words, is coming up constantly in the things that you're saying. And so matching and mirroring is really, really important. But to be able to articulate it in those steps is so helpful.
Yeah, it's one of the most challenging things. And a lot of people will say, well, I shouldn't have to change who I am kind of thing. But I think anyone who's in a leadership or a position of power, it's our job to be malleable. It doesn't mean you change completely who you are, but you're just changing how you're communicating with that person so that you can get a better result for them.
And as most people hear me bang on all the time, we're all leaders. If you're guiding and using your authority and respect to help nurture an impactful, meaningful change in the treatment room, then you have to use all these tools. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to that one common thing that you keep saying all the time, comes back to relationships. Building trust, building relationships, building rapport. All of these things are so important, and the evidence supports that you get a better outcome as a result. So it's so great to actually hear it broken down like this, because I think as practitioners, we don't do this enough. We all sit there and go, oh, I know how good it is. I know how important it is to communicate, but yet we actually don't polish it and practice it enough.
It's definitely an area we could improve in, I think. And when it comes to improving in communication, the best way to do it is to actually film yourself and see, how do you look? How do you sound? Because if you are like monotone the whole time and nothing really changes, you probably don't know that until you see yourself on film. And then what happens is people film themselves and they go, I don't sound like that. It's not me. I'm not that boring. But you are a lot of the time. It's the fact that you just don't see yourself. You don't get that feedback. So I would encourage everyone here watching to video yourself and step outside of your comfort zone and just see what you look like. And if you really hate it, what you can do when you video yourself is click the mirror option, right? Because the reason you hate yourself when you look at, you know, when you take a photo and you selfie right there, you get the mirror here and you're like, oh, damn, I look good. And then you take a photo and then you look at it and it's a different person and you're like, this is terrible. Why are these two different? And the reason for this is because we always see ourselves in a mirror. And then when we take a photo, it's not mirrored. And so we don't like that version of ourselves. Whereas everyone else sees the non-mirrored version and likes that looks normal. And if they see us mirrored, it looks weird. So that's the reason why you hate how you look on camera most of the time.
Self-reflection and self-awareness is one of the most valuable gifts that we can give ourselves. I mean, I do things like this. When I first started doing these lives, I would rock in a corner thinking, oh my gosh, I can't. And obviously the perception of people think that I'm confident and all of those sorts of things. I hate it. For those of you who are watching at home, I hate it, but I do it because obviously your passion is in education. If you're not putting yourself in front of a camera, or at least in front of people, you're not really communicating full stop. I mean, you can't really communicate with yourself, can you? That's your own subconscious. That's where the crazies start.
Yeah, that's it. For those who don't know, Jade's actually going to go crawl up in a ball after this and be like, oh, too much talking.
Every week.
You're really good. What have your experiences been out of interest, obviously being a leader in a large team, right? Of different different people who've had different success as clinicians. Because I think what I've found is that it's not always, it's very rarely the best technical clinician that gets the best results with patients. It's someone who has a good mix of the two. Like, what have you found?
Oh, absolutely. And whilst what we do, placing our hands, the technical skills that we learn to be able to produce an outcome is so important, as you were saying before, without the ability to communicate that, you actually don't achieve any of those results. And I find mostly, and I hate putting it like this, but you know, the type of person you are is the type of practitioner you will be. And if you look at yourself and reflect on your life, and we are a reflection of the 5 most important people around us, if you're a likable person, you're already streets ahead. And often people can be very engaging, but also I feel, and you know, you can probably tell me if I'm wrong, it comes down to a little bit of intuition. There are just practitioners that are intuitively good at reading people, and those ones are the ones that thrive, because you can build up technical skills as you go. But if you are a nurturing, empathetic, kind-hearted, likable, compassionate person, you're going to get results because people trust you. And whilst you can build trust over time, the practitioners that build trust and rapport faster get results quicker, in my experience.
Yeah, look, that's why I wasn't successful as a practitioner. So, but I just a shout out to Brendan Mowat, who I think is incredible at that, like genuinely incredible. So for those that don't know, go over and give him a follow too.
Amazing, the knowledge exchange.
Very good. Actually, one thing that does relate to that real quickly is, and I find this interesting, and Vin Zhang, if you've ever watched any of his stuff, he talks about it all the time, is if you're technically a 10 out of 10 on your scale here, this is 10 and this is 0. And if you're technically a 10 out of 10 at what you do, but you communicate as a 5 out of 10 for your communication here, then the people around you, the people you see, they'll perceive you to be a 5 out of 10. They won't perceive you to be a 10 because you can't communicate it well enough to be perceived that way. Whereas, and this frustrates many people, because you'll see these technically brilliant people who get frustrated by someone who's not as technically brilliant, who might get promotions or move forwards or do better in certain areas, right? And it's because, let's say this person's a 5 out of 10 technically, right? Like my handwriting is like a 3 out of 10 technically, okay? But let's say that they're a 7 out of 10 with their communication. Then people will perceive them to be a 7 out of 10. They'll perceive them to be a 7 out of 10 physio, osteo, because that's the level that they communicate on.
And we do it all the time. You know, people make judgment straight away in a short period of time, whether we like it or not. People will judge you. People will assume things of you. Yeah. And I think if we don't anticipate that, we can't own it. And building relationships, in any relationship, whether it's a personal, an intimate, or a professional one, the reality is much like in this day and age people do on Tinder. If people don't look at you and see you anywhere from a 7 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10, they'll swipe left. And they do that with practitioners. You know, the patient's swiping left that we see is a patient not coming back. And that's purely by judgment. You get one crack at it, and that's why the initial consultation is the most important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we see it time and time again. And to me, that's the most exciting thing, though, is that it's something we've got so much control over. We can genuinely improve our communication if we spend time focusing on it. And if we all raised our communication by 10%, then I genuinely think that we can start to reverse the trend of things like chronic pain. We'll get our patients better. We'll have better outcomes within the clinic. We'll have less people dropping out of healthcare. I think 40% of physios will drop out of private practice by the 5-year mark because they're not getting career satisfaction. Right? If we can reverse all those trends by improving our communication, then I think it's a worthwhile thing to be talking about a little bit more.
I could not agree with you more.
So that's where my interest in it comes from. You know, being early on in my career and not getting results with people and trying to find the magical technique that I was missing or the magical exercise that would start fixing these people in front of me. And then I would hand them off to a more senior practitioner And he would do the same thing, but they would get better. And pulling my hair out going, well, what am I missing here? But it wasn't something I was missing. It was the way that I was communicating, the confidence, the clarity that he had. I didn't have that yet. And so that person didn't believe in me. And because they didn't believe in me, they didn't do their management as well as it, and they didn't get better.
And that's true conviction, isn't it? You have to believe in what you're saying. You have to believe that people are going to get better or move better or make a meaningful change in their life if you're going to empower them to do so. And I think that's where tone and pitch and all those things that you're talking about before in regards to energy, you can't motivate somebody by saying, how about we have a go at this? It's true sales. At the end of the day, we're naive to think that we are not salesmen. We sell health. We sell health every day.
Yeah.
And you can't sell something unless you believe in that product. And we have a brilliant product, whether it be physio, chiro, osteo, but you have to believe in it, and then you have to deliver it and communicate what it does best and why somebody should buy into that treatment plan.
Well, that's it. And I think the issue with sales, right, is that when we think of a salesperson, we're like, it's that sleazy used car salesman. He's trying to sell me a dodgy car, and people who are really money focused and thinking about themselves. Whereas sales, like everything is a sale. If there's a transaction, it's a sale, right? We like as healthcare professionals, we are salespeople. We just need to reframe what that is. Because if we can reframe sales from being, and we could do a whole section on the board for this if you really want to, if you want to reframe sales, we just need to look at, well, what are we actually selling and how do we sell? Because we sell education, health outcomes, we sell independence, we sell improved quality of life. And the way that we do that, I believe, is quite ethical. And so when you think of sales as that, and you're then asking someone to come back for another appointment, I find it easy because I genuinely know I can help that person. But if I didn't, like if someone was coming to see me and in my head I'm like, I don't think I can help you, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't, because I don't believe in that. But if you believe that you're going to help that person, then it's probably the easiest thing, as long as you genuinely believe.
But so believe first, and then great communication second, and there comes your outcome. Half the hard work's sort of done for you if you can get through both those hurdles.
And I still think young practitioners don't give it enough respect, the communication side of it. They still come out going, yeah, but I need to get better at this manip, or I need to get better at this exercise or soft tissue release. And like that'll come. And those things all play a role in decreasing the pain experience and getting people back to what they love doing. But if you can't really push that person on the right way to looking after themselves, which is what communication does, it makes them actually take a more empowered role in their healthcare and gets them out that cycle of dependence, then I don't think all those other things are going to be successful no matter how good you get at them.
Absolutely. If somebody doesn't rebook, you don't get an opportunity to do any of the future techniques you have planned in their future management. So it doesn't matter what brilliant management plan you put down in writing or what patient treatment plan you've got set for them for the next 8 weeks. If you have one consultation, don't communicate well, they don't rebook, they've swiped left and they've found the physio down the road.
Yeah. And I'm going to be a bit controversial here in that I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see in people working with chronic pain is they don't see them enough. In the first couple of weeks, we try and see, especially chronic pain patients, 4 to 5 times. And the reason for that is we're not changing a structure. We know that it's not changing. The work we do on them, whatever we may do, it's not actually changing a structure. But we're creating a relationship with that person. We're starting to understand the journey and the cycle that they've been through. They might have been in pain for 10, 15, 30 years, right? We're understanding them and their journey and giving them time to get that out. We're building a plan with them. We're educating them. And we see them a lot in that first 2 weeks. Like I said, 4 to 5 times, which a lot of people look at and go, but you can't change the structure, right? We're not trying to change the structure. We're trying to build a great relationship because we know once that person is on board with the management plan, because we've created a really good relationship, that we can then get them out of that circle of disempowerment and move them towards an active-based therapy that's going to help them to achieve the results they want.
And it's not controversial. We've got one of the most brilliant minds, Della Buttigieg, coming on in July to do one of our live at lunch. And anyone who has heard her speak could sit there and listen to her all day. And she talks
Yeah.
about this a lot. So I can't wait for you to see what she's got from us. You know, she's just brilliant. But she reflects and mirrors your words there when it comes to that sort of stuff.
No, it's, I think it's important. And a lot of people don't do it. A lot of people are scared of over-servicing in that regard, but people are coming to us for an outcome. And I wonder, I'd love to see a study on this. If they ask people with chronic pain, what would you pay to get out of this chronic pain? Like, what would you pay if you could pay an upfront fee right now? What would it be? And I wonder who would say, let's say they said, I would pay $5,000 and your average consult fee might be $100. They're saying I would pay for 50 appointments upfront if I could get out of pain. Now, I believe that it shouldn't and won't take that long, but I think that if we don't build a great relationship to start with, we won't get to that next phase because we won't get past that fear avoidance, that disempowerment, that poor beliefs, etc. So anyway, I got really sidetracked and really stuck on that for a second.
That was probably my fault, sorry.
No, that's that's all right. Do you have any more questions about, I know we're got 8 minutes left, but do you have any more questions on any of that?
No, I just think in summary, as you were saying before, I think underservicing is just as detrimental as overservicing, which pretty much summarizes all of that. But no, handing back to you.
Beautiful. I think that's about it. That's pretty much it for today. If you take away a few main things, it's reframe treating other people how you would like to be treated to treat other people how they would like to be treated. Acknowledge that we're in a position of power and it's our job to be malleable and to change our communication style to the person in front of us. As leaders, that's our role. And like Jade says a lot, we're all leaders in healthcare. And really just, we have an opportunity here. And I think we can get better. Like I myself am continuously practicing communication. And I think we can all improve. And if we all raise our bar in communication, we're going to help more people. We're going to slowly start to get rid of this chronic pain epidemic. There's going to be less people that die of fun fact, actually not fun fact, terrible fact. Can we edit that out? Wow. Terrible fact. More people die each year in America from prescribed pain medications from their family doctor than from guns. Okay, just let that sink in. You hear about all this gun violence, but you don't hear about the people who die from the side effects of the pain medications they've been taking for chronic pain, which we know does not work. Okay? So when we think of it in that regard, I think that by improving our communication and our standards, that we can actually save lives. It's not just decreasing pain, it's the flow-on effect. We will genuinely save lives.
And look, the take-homes from today, obviously communication is so important. You've articulated it so beautifully. Your slides are very much appreciated, and even your scribbling, which is not a good way to describe it, in the back beautifully. But, you know, for me, the common theme throughout this is the trust component, listening, keeping things simple, the fact that we do lead and empower, we nurture people's emotions. But ultimately, there's a huge difference between communication, which is really valuable, and lecturing. And one of my great mentors says all the time, as adults, one of the most disrespectful things that we can do from one adult to another is lecture them.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between offering education and communication and then delivering it exactly as you said. And Sammy, I think it was, your receptionist, was a great example of how you just need to change your communication style and adapt and be malleable in your personality depending on who's right in front of you. And whether it be verbal or non-verbal, adaptability is the key. And I think all of your slides summarize that beautifully. Ultimately, we're in it together. We're guiding a patient, but a patient very much guides us, and we should be learning and listening from them all the time to get the best outcomes possible. So look, your work is amazing. I've followed you for some time in communication, but I mean, you run a whole lot of other courses. So if people have loved this sort of stuff, where can people find you? Can you tell us more about your online course now, or is that still a secret?
No, we can tell you about the online course and put pressure on me to make sure that it gets released on Monday when it is meant to be. So we have iMoveU, which is aimed at improving practitioners' soft skills, their communication, as well as how that tangibly applies to in clinic and actually helping them to get better outcomes, to improve their career satisfaction, stay in longer, and essentially achieve what they wanted to achieve when they first set out to be a physio, a chiro, an osteo, etc. Something we're really passionate about, having sort of felt that massive dip at the start. So you can find us on iMoveU. You can go to www.imoveu.com.au if you want to check out our website, which is under development. It's kind of shit. You can still check it out. We've got a Facebook group, a private group with about nearly 5,000 health professionals in it now. And that's the iMoveU private Facebook group, I believe it's called. You have a look. We can put a link to that if you'd like. We'll be releasing our online live event. So our one-day event we've filmed. We're going to be releasing it on this Monday. And we've also got a subscription product coming up, which is it's a month-to-month product, where we're going to be taking people through a whole myriad of things, actually. Basically a 12-month PD program that's going to start with really in-depth goal setting and how to tangibly set goals. Because we know if we set really good goals to begin with, really good goals, and show you how to achieve that and break it down, and great time management, right? That everything else thereafter is going to be better. So we're going to do that. We're going to be looking into patient management, clinical care, how people actually get better. We're going to be looking into a few different clinical sort of interventions and aspects, as well as the research. We're going to have the freshman physio join us to do that. We're going to have Dave Renfrew, the pain weapon, who's one of the most interesting people on earth you'll ever meet, to do a pain science area. And there'll be a whole month on communication. There'll be a month on social media and marketing, and how to market yourself as a practitioner, sort of being a little small business owner within a small business, essentially. So we're going to go into all those things. There'll be 12 modules over 12 months. And we're super excited to be releasing that. It's been in the pipeline ever since COVID started, actually. And we had all this free time to sort of go, what can we do?
You were pivoting, were you? Pivoting through opportunity.
Pivoting, I think that's been really overused. Let's just call it we were turning.
No, that's good. Look, your passion for education and communication and public speaking is so, it's so obvious, and we can't wait as one of our GRX leaders to see you talking on the stage next year, on the main stage, which hasn't been announced yet, but it's like the TED Talks of allied health. So to give you 12 minutes, 12 speakers on the stage, I think we'll get to see you in your element doing what you do best. But I just wanted to thank you again. Thank you for all your contributions. Not only do you have a business to run and very valuable information that you do sell through courses, but you offer so much free content, discussion, advice, and we need more people like you in this industry. And, I'm certainly grateful for you and everything that you're doing to make healthcare better. Thank you, Jade. Look, thanks for having me, to give me the opportunity to talk about something that we could go all day here. You get bloody bored with me, but I could talk about this all day long. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, whether through Facebook or anything afterwards, to chat a little bit further, I love this stuff, and I could, talk all day about it. And you're also one of our GRX leaders. So if you head to the GrowthRx.com website, you'll see a lot more about Pete and everything that he's doing, and you'll be able to click on the links and connect with him as well. But thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Live at Lunch. We will see you next Thursday. Bye.